project is a large-scale project, and I know that it might give a lot of tension to the discussions, because I will be talking about something that is very top to bottom kind of approach. We did talk a little bit during the coffee break about the procurement, because these three projects is actually in one site, and it's a government project, and it has a lot of political tensions, and yeah, I hope I can contribute to this session. Okay, so basically we were approached by, some of the base fundamental info is that in Indonesia we have it's not a federal, but it's central government, and then provincial government, and then prefecture government. The provincial government actually do not really administrate a lot of money. It's actually the prefecture that administrate a lot of money. The provincial, however, because they are above several prefecture, they can shift the money from one prefecture to the other prefecture. But that's the one fundamental thing. The other fundamental thing is that the prefecture is having every level of government having an election for 5 years time, every 5 years time, and used to create problems because different location of prefecture or even within the same province were elected at different cycles. So in terms of procurement of projects, it create problems in the provincial levels because people are coming and going. Now we're trying to move. The government of Indonesia is trying to deal with this and force every. By the next 2 years, we will have everything is in the same cycle for all Indonesia, all level of governments. Now, we were approached by the Lombok, which is Lombok is a prefecture government on early, I forget if it's not the end of 2016, early 2017. At the beginning, the brief was very basic, that is to design. They have this place called Empenan Harbor. It's an unused harbor with a very long history actually, and the design brief was to build a creative hub in there, just because few weeks before the governor of Jakarta is governor of Jakarta has established a creative hub in Jakarta. So we're talking about Lombok city, which is a very small city, maybe around not even 2 million, or say 2 million, 1 to 2 million inhabitants, and Jakarta, which is core 12 million and 20 million with its commuting inhabitants. So it's very different, but that's the problem that we have in many countries, is that everybody is looking at the capitals. So, and which is like contextually it's very different stages and problem. Now, the site that we were given with the Empenan Harbor has a long history, even before the colonial eras. So this is Bali. Just going through this is the only kingdom in Indonesia that was never conquered by the Javanese, Majapahit, and Sumatran Sriwijaya, or even the Dutch. They were never conquered by them. Now, during the colonial era, the Dutch decided to move the roots from East Java, because this is Java, Bali, and this is Lombok Island, directly to Lombok here to cut all kind of supplies. So that's one of the thing. And after independence, and then we have the new order era. They restore balance by creating two different harbors. So from Bali to Lombok, from Lombok to the next island, which is Sumbawa. And because of that, they disuse the Ampanan that the going to be our side. So originally in Lombok there was only one big harbor. And the other thing is that it is also the gateway to Islam to enter to Lombok, which is very important because Lombok is known as the island of 1,000 mosques. So that's another important thing. Now this is the side is the yellow, and then this is the Ampanan area, which is strangely because the first thing that we do was we look up the codes, the building codes, that none of this area are protected by the preservation codes. So anyway, so there are this intersection called the Ampanan intersection, and then two main roads. Now we start with this one here first, the green. So what's in it is leftovers of Dutch. Actually, it was from the pre-colonial era, but it became big during the Dutch era. They called it the old city, and then the intersection, which you can see. This is a new thing that we don't even know why they designed this kind of thing, gateways, but you can see some of the Dutch reminding buildings. And then the fourth, this one that's lead from the main intersection to the side, is even weirder. So the government initiated a program where they paint the buildings. And there's another story to this, is that this was actually one of the area of the pre-independence day a rich family who used to be in here before then, and then they moved somewhere else. So they still belong to them. So the government cannot acquire them because they don't need money, and they will not sell it. So it becomes problematic because it's within a Ring 1 development to the city.
That was a tuk-tuk with a horse.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
So, and then the side context, we cannot find any, because this is the harbor, and everything in here is chaos. So you have this on one side, you have this. See, even when they have like this a big courtyard or piazza or whatever, even the plantation are not aligned. I don't know why they put it like a scattered all over the place. And they have a what do you call it, a library with no book, because they call this a library but no books in it. But you know the kids usually go up and watch the sunset. And then when they call it the culinary center, which is actually it's just just tents, and the government actually collect tax from them. Now total chaos, toilet dysfunction toilet, and then suddenly they have this a theater, they call it, and then there's one remaining Dutch house in there. It used to be the house for the what do you call it, the harbor master during the colonial era, which is owned still by a Dutch family that lives in the Netherlands and wish not to sell the property. And then suddenly there's this building there, and then but the main area that was given to us was this. So they have this pilotis kind of thing where people are selling their goods in there. Basically, it's like a very cheap goods. So at first, because the beginning of the brief was actually that they will create something for the people in there, which was not our business, and they want us to design the creative hub in that location. And our proposal was, because we don't want to spend too much public money, we ran a structural test, and all the structure is okay. So the proposal was to build over existing structure. So it's just like it's very simple. We just put in the bricks and layout of the bricks and so on and so on. Just very quickly, more or less like this. So there's no photo because it's not built, but there's the long story, political story behind this project. So just layering the bricks and everything, and then we insert the program based on the existing structure, because obviously they also want to have it similar to the one in Jakarta. Okay, more or less. I need to jump in and out a lot. Okay, so long story short, we never found any replacement for the people that were supposed to be Chekhov. So we were asking who designed the replacement for them, and we were actually at some point we offered them our let's call it a CSR from us to design for them, and then at the end of the day they changed their mind, the government, and then decided to scrap off the hub, creative hub, because the question from us from the day one was, do you really need that? They are we can allocate the funds for many things, many other things, and then suddenly they want to design a public park on the same location, still with the answer that somebody else is doing the new culinary center, which so on and so forth. And then during the discussion, actually we pulled this out, but because we know that they will hoping like this. So one of the things is that behind the discussion, we would always talk about precedents, and they will always talk about Europe or US or in this case Paris, Sydney, and Singapore. So and then we were okay, and then at the end of the day we tried to convince them that the three things that we look at, the Paris and Sydney Opera House area, Darling Harbour area, and Gardens by the Bay are composed of many different structures of buildings. You cannot create the whole fabrics if it's only one fabric. It has to be like the whole fabrics. And then the other things that we need to think something that will have to be done within the 5 years period, because different government will be a different agenda. So, and then we are proposing that we will do a master plan that will include an investment plan and including the whole economic calculation from that. But under one condition, that we will be allowed to explore what kind of architecture we wish to explore. So we came about to this location. So this is actually the what do you call it? the traditional Sade village, which is in the Lombok Island. So Lombok Island is very so what happens is that in Lombok Island they have one singular main ethnic group that is totally different to the Javanese, which compose almost majority of Indonesian, or even the Balinese, which is just next to it, called the Sasa's people. So we created a calculation of a new golden section based on the on that Sasa's reminder. And then what happened is that from there we synthesize the different golden section application. How do we applicate this whole thing? How can it be applied? So for instance, for the mosque, because the first question from them will be what the mosque will look like. So this was one of the early sketches that we did for them. So the archetype stays as a Lombok people's archetype, but it was just like twisted. And when we did the first not meeting, what do you call it? Hearings, because it's a public funding, it creates a lot of outrageous thing, because they said that this is not Islamic. That's what they said. And then we have to prepare a presentation that explain the history of Islamic architecture from Arabs all the way through Europe, Africa, through Europe, until it reached to Indonesia. It's very hard for us to define what is Islamic architecture. So, like, the one very fundamental question from us to them was that does the mosque dome is equals to Islamic architecture? It's not, because it was copied from the Pantheon, and the local people would not understand this. So, because like when they said, okay, if you want to build something Islamic, there has to be a dome in there. Something like that, which is very actually Romanian kind of architecture. And then the second was this one. So what happened is that we simplified the frequency of the golden section to achieve another different kind of forms, a new but driven from the same archetype. This was for the amphitheater. Or amphitheater roof. Okay. And then the last one was because we need to make some bargain. Is that there has to be a Louvre in there, like the Louvre in Paris. So okay, we'll design something look like the Louvre, but basically still under the same golden section. So basically this is what we did. This is the mathematical calculation from there. And then this is the first attempt for the mosque. The second attempt for the amphitheater. And the third attempt for the pavilion, performing act pavilion. And then we also create some details. This was 2017 on the early March 2017 on the second hearings to the House of Representatives. And then around that time, we were commissioned to do another study for a different project in a different location. That is, they call it the new gateway to the city from the airport. So it's a kind of like but I will go to there. And then those kind of things were actually, to be honest, is for us to provide a kind of lip service. And then the design that came later on was actually our vision. So what happened was that, okay, then they want, all these little different things to make up the fabrics. Now, but one of the main thing is this building here, because this building is at 3 floors, and then the first floor will be on lease to two local businessmen who will open. One person will open a McDonald's in there. The other person will open a Starbucks in there. Now, this is where the game started, was from there. So, and then we have we're supposed to have one long ramp, and then the second floor and the third floor is dedicated for the replace merchants, for the culinary merchants, that they used to sell their goods using cart. They can bring the cart in because it's on ramp and it's in the second floor. The first arguments to the investors, quotes unquote, is that because you will need the ground floor as an anchor project. But the second argument is that actually the second and the third floor has the better view because it's like on the sea line. So anyway, this is the design, different face on different level, because this face is facing the sea. This one is behind the sea, because we are creating a kind of a piazza. So you can see that's okay. But actually, I need to skip many things because my point for this presentation is not on the design. This is the building. Okay, so, and then another building is for a hostel building, because we told them, it's because they're going to the harbor will be refunctioned, but only for tourism purpose. Now, what they don't have in Mataram, so they have hotels. They have 5-star hotels that were never full. They have 4-star hotels that also never full. But the thing is that, they don't have this kind of hostel for backpackers and everything. It's because it's already belongs to the people. The area is for a low economy people area. So we need to provide something different. So, but there's a reason to all of this. And I will go to there. Okay, so this was the initial proposal called the Iconology Mataram, the root, the symbol, the icon, and the vision, but everything to be done only in 5 years' time. And the development plan was this. This is the existing. Existing was like this, all different buildings and structures. a development plan phase 1, just to change the roof for the toilet, and then dismantle the whole thing using the existing structure and create a selfie tower, which is very cheap actually, and then create the park based on the fabrics, local fabrics design, and then the amphitheater here. So development phase 1, development phase 2. This one is phase 3. This one is phase 4, is just for the sake of the proposal, because we didn't do any calculation on phase 4, because they want whatever, blah, 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 and we didn't do the calculation anyway. This is recycled structure. The renderings. Okay, so but the main story of the project was actually starting from this. So what happened is that this is the part that we did not present to them, but we gave them one by one, not the whole thing. So this whole project costs 42 billion rupiah, has to be done in 5 years. 42 billion is equivalent to 2.3 million USD. Lombok is one of the top 10 poorest province. The Mataram is good, but the province is actually considered poor. NTB is a poor province. But that's the idea, is that out of these 42, we differentiate the whole thing until to become a different parcel of projects. So we have this one, for instance. Now, this whole parcel, it becomes this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 different parcels of projects was interwoven under the same, under one investment plan. So what happened is that on the darker side here, this is the money to be invested out of the public fundings. On this one is out of the private sectors. So this is the year, the semester, semester of, okay. So this is 2017 semester until 2020. So what happened is that to ignite the investment, the government need to procure some of the basic things. So for instance, this one. So we have project 1, project 2. Now these basic things will become foundation for the other things. So we create a detailed scheme for the flow of the project for the whole five years, and then at the end, the government will only need to pay 9.5% out of the whole investment, and it becomes make sense. For example, I give one example. The culinary building it will be to be on lease for 15 years, but the building will be the building costs 12 billion rupiah. It will be subjected to the leaseholder, and they have to build the whole 3 floors. So the government will get the second and the third floor for free. And then for the leaseholder, 12 billions for 15 years is very cheap. And then the other thing is the hostel will fund the whole scheme of the other public areas. It comes at a net. It's not that expensive, around 9.6 billion, around 9.6 billion rupiah, which if we calculate the return of investment, it only reached for 5 years. It's already return of investment, so it's not a risky business actually. So yeah, and then the other thing is that the projects will go side by side with us providing the technicalities, advices for building what we call the temporary culinary shelter, which is actually, it's not a temporary, it's just the name that we need to give them just to ensure that they can still live while we're doing the projects, because it's like a 5 years project. So, and then however, actually we were already on the third at that time, 2017, mid 2017, we already did the third hearing to the House of Representatives, and then suddenly they decided to have another projects in the different location, which is the gateway to the city, and they choose a different competitor that we didn't even know if we have a competitor, because for that project we managed to design something that is cost roughly only in between 7 billions, but for 5 years, so it's actually cheap for 5 years. And then they decided to go on building what they called the metro tower. So the location is the middle of nowhere because it's a new road. They built this tower with elevators in the middle so that people can go up, but it's in the middle of nowhere. So I don't know what they're going to look. So, and it costs 35 billions, and then they go over budget, and then they took the budget from Ampenan, threw it from there, and then everything is a mess. And then because we protested a lot, and then at the end of the day, when we are going to second phase of design, which is the design engineering drawing, they decided not to use our service. But at the end of the day, they did it themselves. So this was before we came, 2017, and then this is late 2018. So they did it themselves, which is, on drawing it looks simple, but on the field it's not simple at all. But yeah, and then so they failed, so they decided to make another project. So, and then I don't know what they're doing with this kind of thing. So basically that's the problem, political wheels and everything. They already have the funding, they need to build something, but they realize suddenly in the middle of that, they realize they cannot do it themselves, so they have to build something. So they change and then, like for instance, this is the tower. Was the initial design was using a steel structure. It still comes at the cheaper price, and then suddenly they decide to use concrete, but with the same module. So a concrete with the same thinness of the concrete, of the steel, because they cannot bother to calculate the structure and everything, and it collapsed. So 2018, late 2018, it collapsed, while the 35 billion projects end up stalling anyway. So this is the 35 billion projects stall, and after now is 2019 going to 2020, everything is on hold. So yeah, I think this is what I want to contribute to the session, is that after, I think we have a very rich session from the playfulness of a material through everyday, day-to-day basic life goods to the real rich session was, I guess I'm a good friend of Rilis, but I never see this presentation before. So for me, it was like, also it was talking more about the people than the projects. And then so before came here, I thought I would talk about money wise rather than the design. Okay, thank you very much for the time.
People hate me because everyone's hungry, but they're very small. Is that okay?
We never hear you.
Okay, thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation, and I think for me it was also, I could relate to it a lot, because I think we're facing a similar sort of we're a similar crux between when it comes to traditional architecture. In your case, you were looking at crafts, but also in our case, it's looking at vernacular architecture in rural areas, and also the influx of concrete construction, which is seen as developed and modern. And I think what you were working on, the festival that you curated and got different artists, so a hybrid sort of approach. I like that also, because I think usually what happens is either you have something which is really like contemporary and seen as modern, and then you have traditional architecture which is also seen to be fossilized. You kind of just recreate it the way it is. So I think redesigning it, as you called, or working on hybrids, I think is a very good approach. Perhaps others can also relate to that. And also what you said about documentation as knowledge transfer, I thought that was very, I mean, I found all of your works very thoughtful. And and basically I think seeing how from one project what you learned and applied to the next project. So I think that sort of work or thought, body of thoughts in progress, which is also what I felt about Rich's experimentation and work. And I can't wait to see your workshop. It was really nice to visit sometime if it's possible. And we are working on construction worker housing ourselves. In India, what we're looking at is usually the people who build houses on sites, they actually stay in the worst situation, right? So as architects, what can we do to design better spaces for them? And I really like the fact that you actually thought about it. And if all architects can just simply do that, just take out like a few extra days from their design work and actually also design construction worker housing on sites, I think it will make so much of a difference in urban context. And I just want to say, Rich, I really liked, I think like the way you think about things and also you talk about them. So when you're talking about adaptation and also as architects, how we need to fight, I mean, what you call this fight, I think these are things to keep in mind. So that's it. These are my quick thoughts I wanted to share.
I remember the first response when I did the sharing, like in the context of Taiwan, like so they shared the experience that we had and also the talk. Like so, I got some responses from the indigenous community from Taiwan. So it's like because I think they also in a lot of places, indigenous wisdom and indigenous knowledge or the community is kind of like the marginalized community. Yeah, but not in Borneo. Yeah, so I think. Yeah, really. Yeah. So I think this is something that like how could in the midst of like the chaotic political world at the moment that happening in our background, I think it's quite a lot of conversation take place. But rather than focusing forward, I think a lot of like solutions actually happen. Like something that we can find from either the rural area, either the indigenous community. So this is what we find like along the process of making, along the process of developing or documenting. We do find that we have a lot of like question or inquiry coming from different communities. So I do think that like this is not really a Borneo, just a Borneo model. It's something that it should take place in other places. And regarding the question about like whether it should be open up for other organizations or other members of the society like to take part. I do think it's very important because a lot of time we're living in this Adam Smith, like relying on the trickling down, economy, relying on a compartmentalized, component of the society to kind of support the industry to go further. But the end result of that, like, or what we are seeing right now is like the work kind of like dismember, and also there is a lot of like social injustice, and or the like people don't believe in other people, don't trust other people. So I think like so is Malaysia. I think Malaysia is living in a time that is kind of sadly there's a lot of, I don't know whether you agree, but sadly I do feel that like Malaysia is in the political conversation that there's a lot of tension because of misunderstanding, and simply because people don't understand each other. Like they don't. It's like building a Babel tower. Yeah, at the moment I feel that the national narrative, but like what I think Borneo at the moment is kind of offer a different narrative, which is something that like I do feel that like if we engage the community in the process of making or constructing or designing, I think it will bring more attention, because a lot of time we kind of like fixated on that triangle relationship, contractor, client, and then designer or architect. We're not really expanding the conversation, and a lot of time we designing simply for the attention of other architect or engagement of the conversation from other architect, which is kind of like nobody really knows what kind of impact footprint we are creating. So I think if we can apply what we have learned from the architectural field and to take it to another level, trying to, but of course it's scary. Yeah, it's scary because from time to time, so when you say our participatory model, I remember we were scared that like maybe only 3 people will come, and then the entire thing fell. But what's surprising is like a lot of people came, a lot of people that we didn't know. And I think like nowadays we already have all the tools that available in the digital world. We can rely on the social media to kind of spread and to engage. So this is, I think, the very major instrument that we're trying to also learning as well, because there is no precedence in the process of doing this. But I think like we are learning alongside creating project. Yeah, but I think like from this kind of project we do realize that actually local authority they start to look at what we are doing, and also trying to see how can they engage in the process. So it's not like, oh yeah, we relying on the client relationship or to get appointed as architect or designer. And I think when they see what kind of impact, what kind of conversation we're trying to put through, they will come naturally. Yeah.
So in a way, the sustainability in terms of the cultural exchange, not just like within that local community, but that can become an exchange of a bigger circle.
Yes, a bigger circle. Because I think this kind of conversation, at this point, our work, I think we need it. Yeah, obviously, like a lot of people when I went back to Kuching or Malaysia, they would think that, oh yeah, you will continue doing all this avant-garde or like Foster-proof architecture. Like you're probably familiar with that terms. Yeah, Foster-proof architecture, high-tech buildings, like using. But I think the inspiration I got from my Foster experience is what is the impact that he created in the society by engaging like the Manchester community in terms of the steel, using the steel for the building tower rather than the brick. So it's kind of going against the Chicago narrative of like just using brick. Yeah, so that's how we have a totally different tectonic. Yeah, so I think this is the same. We need more more conversation. We need more like more people asking questions for for the community, also on behalf of the community. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
And also certain validation, right? Because I mean, as an architect, if you're working using these processes, you're also validating. I mean, something which is now begun to be seen as, at least in India, as poor, right? As this is something which is of the past. So when you're saying that actually this is sustainable, this is, as a Foster proven designer, I'm saying that this is what I choose to do, then you're also validating a practice. And I think that also becomes a really important role that hopefully we have to play.
I also want to point out the fact that like some of the designers that we engage, they are already endorsed by the Queen in Thailand. You know, they participated in the Royal project, and the fact that they set up the workbench next to the craftsmen and coming to them like every single day, and then working with them and bringing some of their work to Bangkok Design Week or Chiang Mai Design Week, I think is already kind of giving the endorsement to the craftsmen, and they all of a sudden they're realizing, oh yeah, we are not simply just craftsmen. Because if you look at the craft context in Asia, it's very different from the West. In Asia, it's very utilitarian based. The whole idea, like whatever we consider as craft, is not done or created out of the purpose of fun, out of the purpose of like, oh yeah, we just want to see this beauty. It's actually something useful. So if we want to look at that, we actually tap into the ecosystem of the making and also the user and also the designer, and I see like if we want to tap into the architecture in our region in the past, if you look at it, like the inspiration we got from it is, yeah, they also engage a lot of craft in the process. So there is no way we kind of skip through the craft and jumping into architecture, because we will end up doing the SOS, same old shit. Yeah. So I think it's very important to also engage that part into our process of making as well. But of course, it's a lot of work. It's not simply just a 1 year plan. It's essentially a 5 years plan.
Do you have any more questions for Wendy before we move to Rich? Otherwise, maybe I can start first. Because I really love your building. It's so beautiful actually, and it's so vernacular. And I think it's so unique to the context, because I don't think maybe Malaysia can build it, but definitely not in Hong Kong, not in China. And at the same time, your workshop and your practice is more like an apprenticeship. Right? If I get it right, it's like the knowledge transfer from one generation to the next generation, and it run on a small group as well. So, do you think, or what's your perspective on these days architectural practice? Because most of them are like giants, like SOM, KPF, those kind of really big firms, and they're those firms who are running like important project in the world. But at the same time, it can be anywhere and can be anyhow and by anyone. But yours is very localized. And would you consider how your local experience can expand to a greater scale, or even to other countries in South Asia continent?
I think for in the daily basis, the hope, the numbers of the villagers staying in the craftsman village, there are still huge number, and then the difference, the salary and so on, they're still very low. For example, for one day, the bamboo craftsman, if they going back to the village, they can only earn like a $5 per day. If they go out to the urban and then make a building, they can earn like 10 to $15. So it's 3 times. So I think if there is a chance, we just need a chance from the client, and we are like having a propaganda to the client, so they will choose to make the approach. we already think that it's supposed to be. For example, you mentioned about the vernacular. I think the way to engage the client is really damn difficult. I'm still looking for the client who can make a bamboos, like a 2 or 3 story for their house or for their guest house, for example. But it's so difficult. They still have a hope of a chance, but there's like we have to put it in the agenda. That's why we are like meeting here. Hopefully by this meeting we can have something. I not call it propaganda, but I think I love what Eka said in the layout. I think what we have in like a meta vernacular thing, that we have to break down the cultural hypnosis. That by working what Professor Darwin said, the ingenious approach of each context, of each person, of each situation, which is make it, I think, quite beautiful in the issue. But I call it like a SOM and then KPF or what like that is. I'm still have a. I mean the objective is to raise the level of from the survival to the expression, which is already quite difficult. But I really like what Eka presentation before, like exposing the truth. And then I think it should be done in the beginning, and then me and then Wendy is just wrapping up into the program, more like a program and then like a living narration. So I kind of think that this kind of template in the what Wendy's done and doing will be very important for engaging the giving the pride and an honor for the things that we, because rich and poor is just a condition of life, right? But giving an honor and giving a identity, I think that's one of the most important things, because nobody don't want to be no one. They just want to be someone. I mean, it's unlocking another level. We are hoping that there's like a rich identity, not on the architect builder, probably the builder architect, whatever it is, like a proper credit. So I think at the end, it will deconstruct the business as usual, like we said, like a big practice like that, into like a smaller bit. So it's become like a more like a collaboration rather than this like a top down. So it's a top down, also bottom up. So it's become like a rhizomatic figures rather than like trees, and we invert it into one. So it's like everything will be just connected, and the most important part is just sharing the framework, which is I do really like in this kind of workshop that happened by.
After you sharing, I even like your building, because you're not just building a building, but you also build a community and build the people as well.
Yeah.
Because by giving them the pride and the faith, I think they will love the community even much more. That's something we lack in the city.
And the builder, they have the Instagram, some of the builders. And just like having a selfie in front of their building is something like that. They can be the person who convinced the client as well. So in our office structure, they will be not the designer or project manager. So the head of the craftsman will be the person who negotiate directly with the client. And then after that, below him or her is gonna be the designer, architectural designer. So it's inverted in a way. And the designer need to learn, and me need to learn from them. So my duty is conceptual, schematic, design development. So their duty is guarding and the collaboration thing. And that's magical formula is rather than, and then when it's done, the building, they can be proud of the process, because they are like holding the trust from the client directly. and suddenly I don't know what's going on, and they just collaborate with the client. So it's just good.
So you're the design and build company or
Design.
design?
Yeah, design. I call it like a management because the build itself is just hosted by the builder.
Okay.
So I don't know their system now. So it's just a management constructions, but it's working directly. So having like a percentage fee of the building, which make it easier.
Or you get a percentage of the contractors
Contractor just leave it to them
to them.
directly.
But you connected the contractor and
I know.
client.
Yeah, with the structurizing, with the theory, like a framework, things like that, how to work and what's the thing. But every day we need to engage. But the key is the head of the craftsman. They need to be humble, they need to be honest, and when there is like a play of the working time, oh, it's gonna be disaster for them because there is like a system. CCTV, WhatsApp group, Facebook, report, budget, notes, and everything. It needs to be documented. That's why the administration is really, really tight. It's including the financing as well. The cost evaluation schedule, timeline evaluation schedule, which is it's like another things to be reported to the client, which make the designer sometimes in the studio has a very hard time just to know what's going on with the timeline, with the costing. But that's what client love. That's why and the craftsman which has like a ghost soldiers behind them, yeah. So they're like very proud of themselves, and we help them with the tools. Suddenly they can read the S curve, they can read the cost estimations, and they're like a more educated in a way to execute the project professionally. And from one project they can handle 3 projects, and that's one of the, and they can train more new people. So from like 10 people in the bunch, they become like 30. So I think it's one of the things that we can engage into the more and more. So I think
Rich, I really like the fact that your studio looks like it's work in progress, right? For the school, I had a question, and this is also, I think this is across vernacular architecture or in informal settlements where we work in cities. And the architecture has to be such that it changes with time, right? It evolves. You have to constantly keep adding to it, keep rebuilding it. So even in the case of the school with the thatch roof and the bamboo, have you thought of will the same workers go back to repair it, or is this a discussion you've had with the client? And also similarly, if I can just pile on a question to you as well, because you were talking about knowledge transfer of the technology, but I mean, and perhaps to everyone this question applies, but can we as architects actually think about like the life of the project after we leave, right? And how certain practices and processes can continue. So that's the broader question. And to specifically to the school, is that a conversation that you had with the client?
yeah, to be honest, there are many complaints though for the that fiber natural material because not many R&D executed before, and then it's exposed with the sunlight and it can leak by the time. And then in some of the in Alpha Omega, for example, we have to put like 2 craftsmen in the daily basis.
To stand by.
Not standby, but sometimes they,
For repair the maintenance.
not only maintenance, but they become like the security guard,
Okay.
Staff to the school.
yes, staff of the school.
Okay.
So they're embedded with the client. For some of the housing, for example, you know that in Indonesia there is like a layers of the culture, which is like a assistant in a home. You have 2 assistants, right? One is inside assistant, another one is outside assistant. Outside is like a gardener. It's like a landscaper.
Stage driver.
That's just a driver.
Yeah.
And then they are the craftsmen. They are very nice people, and we are connected easily. And some some of the time I will ask to propose that do they want to have an assistant, and for the villagers they will get the job, but and then suddenly when we have in the studio, right, we have one innovation, and we're sharing the same information through WhatsApp, and they can share it to the client because they're living with the client, and then the client suddenly, oh, I like it, and then they call us suddenly. I mean, this sometimes of that honest ecosystem which is needed, but the objective is to get the survival level, because $5 is really damn low. You
Sorry,
can-
5 years?
$5 per day is really damn low.
Yeah.
For them, going back to that kind of condition is a no-no. So we need, it's more into the ecosystem rather than architecture design.
So what you're saying is through the building process, these sort of relationships get formed,
Yes.
which continue. Is what you're saying. Yeah, and this is, I think, something we don't have to answer right now.
Yeah.
But over the next 2 days, it's just
Yes.
especially if we're working in processes which are a bit more not as rigid as building in concrete, right?
Yeah.
If they're a bit more transient, they're a bit more organic, and they grow. How can we accommodate those into our design processes? But we can think about it
Yeah.
together.
I also want to address like something you spoke about, like because in the past in the community we used to have this craftsman touching up the building once we done the building. Like you see that in the royal palace in a lot of places, and you see that in the temple, like prominent temple. Like normally you will have like carpenter living nearby, just to touch out the thing like every now and then, every season. But then like this is also the kind of role that is missing at the moment when we're coming back to Asia and we're looking at the vernacular form of architecture, or like bringing in some of the either the fibers or the timber. Like we and I spoke to like one of the studios supposed to come, like Begin Studio, and they mentioned to me some very like, it's very alerting fact that in 15 years time, the carpenter in Malaysia, in the Peninsula Malaysia, you won't be able to find them, just because it's like they're not being able to pass down the skill to the younger generation, and also the lack of how do you say it, like people giving credit to them, so the loss of pride. So I think it's something that we need to be very alert about, like while doing this as well, because by bringing in the natural material, looking at the bamboo architecture, for example, it itself is not simply just specifying the material. It itself literally means that how do you bring in the ecosystem? How do you look at the harvesting? It has to be harvested during the right time. It has to be the right specimen, and it has to be like treated properly, and then it has to like done by the like varnished by the right people, and also it has to be put together by the right craftsmen. And we don't just trust any craftsman. We need to like review and also understanding what is that means behind it. So it's literally the entire ecosystem. So I think the same thing apply to either timber bark or timber or other material that available to us. So while we are doing this, if you look at the system we design, comparing to what you're doing, I would say like I'm really envious of the craftsmen that are available for you, because if you look at the system we design, we actually using the steel footing, like and assembling this bamboo. The simple reason is simply because we're not convinced yet with the ecosystem and also like the quality of it. So we want to make it replaceable. Yeah, but in the future, maybe at one point when our material is already mature enough, we probably will do something similar. Yeah, but at this point, we have to design in order to cater for the maturity and also the dexterity of our network and our availability, material availability. So this is something that, like, of course, along the process, we have to documenting it. Yeah, because I think how we design at the moment is corresponding to whatever available to us. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a something like when we are hearing about the ECA presentation in the opening,
is some kind like antithesis of this modernization, modern architecture. What Wendy and Rich did is about non-standardization working. So it's very interesting craftsmanship. In the Siam declaration, there is a statement that they will not use the craftsmanship, something like that. So it's very interesting to me to show the history of architecture, of modern architecture, and what is my friends doing here in practicing everyday and practice of architecture. And then for a perspective of Rich, I like to wait for the tomorrow, because tomorrow we will talking about the rural and urban something, yeah, in the session 3, because it's very interesting to. I want to see the relationship between this human resource, your craftsman, came from village. So so because you want to make an ecosystem from them to to make their economy more good, you make a system, so they have to go to the urban. So it's if your system become massive, it could be duplicated in other projects. So I want to know what is the impact of the skill of the village going to the urban, and what happened with the village itself. It's just living there, but they don't have. Usually, in the past, the village is a place for the craftsmanship too. They are living and working there, and then because your idea, maybe they have to go to the city to make a craftsmanship because it's much more better in salary. And then how they come back to the village again, as just money or something like that. Or maybe they could not make a craftsmanship in the village, but only in the city. So it's just like reverse process from the past. I don't know. So
Okay, I would like to address that. Okay. Yeah. In Alpha Omega, imagine the workforce and the scale. For one building, it could be handled actually by 2 teams. So 10 people. For example, one is for the NIPA, they work, another one for the structure. And when it's finished, and it can be flipped. And now, with the R&D and with their self-confidence, they can reduce the workforce. For example, we're making a Burmese building, only 10 people. So I believe, here it's like Siam is like very generalized, right? It's like reducing the workforce. What I like is more into like a contextualism. So we need to retrain until it gets advanced, right? And it will reduce by itself. But the person who is skilled, they will going up, and they will need to train more people, and there is like a positive ecosystem. And when the bottom skill, they will go up, and probably the one that you mentioned about the current business as usual, it will get deconstructed by itself. But having a villager going to the urban for one building, right, is right now the current R&D in our practice is 10 people. It's getting less to 8 to 9 actually. But considering the number of the people in the village, it's still small number. But the current presentation is just for the current situation. I mean, bringing them to the urban, sometimes it's make a distance to their family. Sometimes they need to bring their wife and their kids, and they need to have a school for their kids in the city. But not all of them. Only the head can do that, because that's the current ecosystem. We are hoping that not only the head, but all of the craftsmen, not that can have their kids schooling. But now there is a distance. Only the head can have their kids schooling in the urban. it's a matter of the how you make money, right? For them, it's not about the moving. Moving is not always easy. But when it's become pride, I think everyone will fight for it because they don't have that thing. It's like one idiom which is the Brahmo they're from Sumedang. It's like they're telling themselves that this is the history of the bamboos is coming alive, and there is like a rumor in their village that they're really proud of showing the drawing that when they're like coming back from the city, they're like a hero.
So what happened in this rural in this village?
They're building
They build-
troops again.
Okay.
So when the opportunity ready, they're ready. So the fantastic thing about no, I don't call it fantastic, but the interesting thing about the facts that going to the school is not the trend anymore.
but getting the job.
Getting the job and crafting is something going on because they can build a building like their father. So
Dignity.
yeah, it's a dignity. The school is not going to be. I mean, in their village, it's still something going on, but cannot have their identity to the, for example, world stage or a city stage or whatever. It's the narration, I think, to twist all of this back into the good.
That's why it's interesting to see this idea in relation between rural and urban. So we always think about that in the workforce of the building, rural people is a supply of the human resource for the urban project. Okay. Everyone workforce is from the rural and from the rural. That's why it's very interesting to solve. I don't know, maybe in the future we can make some kind of research to see this connection, rural and urban. Because many research said that in 2030, the people of the world will be 75% in the urban area. Okay, so what happened with the rural area? And it's already happened in Japan. Many small cities dying and abandoned. Many villages already not the young generation there. So because everyone go to the city to make a living there, because city could pay their higher than in the village. So that's why I'm curious about this kind of your idea and what happened in the
If I
rural
may,
area.
may add just a little bit very quickly. There's another one of the discussion we had on the coffee break was talking about how we can have these wonderful ideas that we are already doing for the private sectors and transfer to public sector. That's another headache actually. So because even when we are not done yet with the private sectors, we are still adjusting ourselves because when we are looking at what had been done in the North during those years, those Siam, Tim Tans, and so on and so forth, they are the ones that built all the cities. I mean, it's a kind of like, they get together, they have a good, I wouldn't say CV or curriculum or whatever, but at least experience in the buildings, in the industry and so on and so forth. And that's how they can build such wonderful places. While when we are practicing here, I'm very curious. Is it only me that happened? It's very hard for us to be able to pull through the same level of discourses and design and the product in the public level. We have even the three of us all have a bad history with the public projects. I'm sure I don't know what happened with the others, but I think that's one of the boundaries that we need to break because that's the thing. What happened in Ampenan was for me was unexpected too, because we entered the project because we were called by the vice mayor, so which is the second person in charge. Very smart person, came from a well-educated, very young, and not many leaders are like that in the prefectural level. Even so, he has all the pressure, political parties and so on and so forth. And not forget to mention the state budget that has to state budget go to our projects. It's very hard with those kind of 19 different segmented small projects. It's very hard for you to take any part, to take something out of it. It's easier if you have like one tower big project. You can just have. So this kind of thing had not happened in Europe and the US, and that is probably one other things that we need to strive for, the public sector.
I want to add something here. So I think if the CM people are responsible for the way cities are built today, then really they're responsible for the problems of the way the cities are built today. So if you know, I mean, the Smithsons, they came up with this whole theory of streets in the air, which led to a lot of multi-story public housing, which we are still suffering from in India. We're still putting like, you know, poorer people in these sort of like really high, multi-story housing, which has been proven failure in UK, in US, but I think in the global south, we still think what has come from CM in the 50 years back, it's still like very much, I think, root of a problem today. So I think perhaps they also led to this whole phenomenon of star architecture, right?
Yeah.
Which also I'm very averse to. So when Zaha Hadid talks about, when she was doing the stadium in Qatar, and she says that, okay, if the workers are dying because of safety standards not being followed, that's not my problem. I'm just the architect. And I think that's the problem with architecture today. And when you say that, okay, in your project, that 10 workers, how will they be employed after the project is over? I think that's the reversal of the CM manifesto declaration, which if we can get to by the end of these 2-3 days, then I would be really, really happy. But I feel this sort of reversal is what is needed today.
Interesting.
I think it was interesting to find the process, to hear the processes of the design and production and construction of these projects. But from what I find, like there is a pattern between the three of you. But at the same time, also I think maybe we could dive deeper into this before any of these jobs can be done or can be started or can evolve. It all boils down to the type of project procurement. So the relationship between client, consultant, other consultants, the law, and the builders. So maybe in your, when I heard about your project, and I'm like, oh, I can't do it in Kuala Lumpur, I'll be sued or something, or because we tend to stick to the more conventional materials because they are certain and we know that what is being drawn will be built, which is always the law in Malaysia. The first is to design, second is to and then to make sure it gets built. In the end of the day, what is already being built matches, tallies the drawing. So that's what constrains us from doing that kind of like R&D projects. So, and at the same time for you, maybe it's the scale that determines. Like maybe you can be more experimental because you're smaller scale, so it's regarded as temporary building in approval of authority. So you can still change your design, you can still engage people to do it. So, but in your case, is about your relationship with the client and the local authority, where you design something, but at the end of the day, like someone else can just take over and build. And I hear that you say that it collapsed, and I'm like, in my first thought was like, who is liable for that? Because aren't there consultants? Aren't there engineers? So I'm just thinking like, because we're all from different countries and states, it would be nice to also get an introduction of how the law works in your country or your state. Because I'm like, how is it possible? I
think I'm struggling a bit with this issue as well. I think that's really rightly mentioned. Through listening to everyone talking and after having attended so many conferences, I always ask the question, would I do the same way as Ririk if I was practicing in Indonesia? And I always envy the fact that he can do that, and because he's in Indonesia. And if I go to China, can I do like what the Chinese architects are doing, because it's so amazing and they have really understood the whole ecosystem of building things there, and it's almost like this really organic process, right? Whereby the role of the architect, which I suppose at the end of the day we're all trying to understand, is really at what stage of the project do we get in? Do we initiate projects, or do we just take the brief from the client, like maybe what I'm probably doing that a lot, and probably also in Malaysia, KL, which has very strict laws, same as in Singapore, Hong Kong as well. We're getting a project brief. I'm asking the client, hey, where's the project brief? I can't design it if you don't give me the brief. I can't say I'm going to do this because it's better or whatever, but it doesn't have any basis, because at the end of the day, sharing Eka this morning, architecture needs a patron, it needs a client, because it costs money, especially if you look into where you're building in, right? Especially in very developed cities or in very rural cities, there's always this divide as to who pays for these materials, buildings, systems, laborers. I can't think about where the worker is going to get the next paycheck, which I really envy. Ririk has that opportunity to do that, being kind of like emotionally and humanistically connected to the community. As much as I would like that, even to do what Wendy is doing, to find collaborators and really dig into the origins of materials and all that, I can't do that, because that's just not something that I can be investing my time on.
And even if you're doing
it doesn't
you
work
might
that
be
way.
breaking the law while you're doing
If I'm asking, if I ask
might
my
go
main
to jail.
contractor where are the workers coming from, are they able to do this? It's not my I can't. As much as I would like to know, it doesn't work that way. It's very sad, but we are all bounded by our kind of practical constraints, the systems that we're working with. And I think everyone just does whatever they think they need to do to kind of work with the system and produce the best results that they could do. I mean, I'm really excited to see what everyone is going to be presenting, because I'm sure everyone is working within their very tight framework and trying to do something really amazing. I think that's what I could see from what Wendy is doing, with that scale, with that architect as the activist, architect as trying to save the rainforest, that kind of ideal. And with Ririk thinking about where the workforce is, $5 versus $15, I'm making them lose so much money, but what is in the project for them to bring back the pride, to bring back the sense of achievement? I think that's just, it's really amazing. So yeah, I think it's super interesting. Although there's this thing that separates every one of us, but I believe that we're all just trying to do our part in making it work.
That's why maybe Siam in the Europe in the past
Yes.
is in the same, more or less the same condition,
Exactly.
same ecosystem.
Yes.
But here we are in the Asia,
Yes.
so diverse.
And I
Rich never worked with the government project.
yes, exactly. So
I have so many case studies.
Yeah, I was going to add also like what Ika said. It's like the unspoken, right? The unspoken in the architectural fraternity about how you actually start from even like procuring the project. How do you actually plan out for your client, down to like the Excel table of your economic returns and all that. And that's something, I guess, as training as an architect, we get involved with as well, just because we don't want to see the project go down the drain and just be wasted. And we invest so much effort and so much of ourselves into each project. And how does that then trickle down to not only about at the end of the day, what do you have to show for it? It's also how much you actually get to provide some sort of a framework for everyone to come on to and to develop from something that you have started off with. So I think that to me is really, really interesting to hear from everyone at the table, because each country has a very different
Yes.
way in which that's being done, right? And I feel that like what Victor has said about like even down to how you procure a project, how do you talk to the client, how do you get the responses through the way it's being built. That's something that I find really interesting to find out from everyone.
Can I share something? I think if I were to do this in London, I would be broke. Yeah, I would be broke.
Absolutely.
That's it. Like, and then it's a very expensive risk and also expensive research.
Yes.
And especially what like RAW is doing. Like when I was seeing it from London, I was like, wow, this is so exclusive, so expensive. Like everyone was like, because I know your colleague
Actually,
and
it's our role.
Yeah.
It's just the presumption, right?
And also
Presumption,
I guess like from you guys, you also worked in a big office, and we similarly worked from a big office as well. And being a very small practice is such a lot of difference from working in a large office kind of mentality.
But I have to say, like the mentality need to change because nowadays we are too focused on like architect as a service provider. But we still not used to the fact that like we already kind of transiting into that we need to also look at product. We need to be good at the product, like providing product. And when I say the product, like either when you say it is like for example, when we actually produce publication. So what I didn't say in the presentation is like when we publish our book, actually it's sold out within a month. So that is the fact that like so your revenue not necessarily coming from a practice point of view, from a business model point of view. Like we too rely on like okay
Just the purity of an architecture
exactly
role,
the
right?
purity of the but who set that out?
Yes.
Seriously, it's non-existent like since 100 years ago. So and then we're so fixated on that model and relying on that model to call ourselves architect.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, so this is where the problem is. Yeah, because I think like I think architectural process or building process is a constant negotiation, either with our stakeholder, either it is the local authority or our contractor. And I think like in Southeast Asia, we just happen to have more luck like to engage our supplier, our contractor. But at the moment, we because of the local authority already subscribe to the Western system.
Yes.
Yeah, which is in favor of certain way of building things, like using concrete, so we can get the warranty. Yeah, or using certain like tectonic system, so we can. So you see, this is all the money eventually will go to them because this is their system.
That's right.
So what I realized in the process is that if you're trying to navigate to be a good game player, you can't be a game changer. Yeah, because I think like some of our revenue you wouldn't expect is came from the crowdfunding. Yeah, it's just people like because of people they understand the process and while you communicating with them, they eventually like they want to see things happen. Yeah, and yeah,
I tend to agree with what Wendy is saying because I think at the end of the day, the limitations of an architect's role, whether because we are from Singapore, the limitations of what we can do is very limited to the way it's being defined as our professional standpoint. And I think it's very different in different parts of the world. Like for example, in America, the design and build model is very much the model to be. And actually, that model is, and like what Real is doing, it's a very strong relationship with the build process, which is where we tend to find a lot of uncertainty from. And at the end of the day, the kind of revenue model of an architectural practice does not need to be such a pure architectural approach because of like historically that has always been the case, right? But I think maybe now it's starting to evolve and it's starting to evolve in different ways. So I don't know how it will evolve in the next 5 to 10 years, but it will be interesting to see.